Greetings, friends. The other day I saw a post by Mark Emery. Emery says, now that every business in Canada is emphasizing how Canadian their products are, can we mandate that Canadian businesses hire Canadians? Does it matter if something is made in Canada if it's not made by Canadians? Send foreigners home. Jobs for citizens only. I think he tapped into a popular sentiment there. I agree with his post. It's a good point. Likewise with mass immigration. If you're going to have nationalism, patriotic sentiment at this time, how can you square that with flooding the country with people who have no connection to this land? The thing that inspired me to do this video was a response to Emery's post. This person, by the name Meme Minders, said the following. There are low-level jobs all over the place. Canadians don't want to do grunt work. With an immigrant, at least I have someone to make me a latte or aid me in the hospital. Do you know how hard it is to find laborers or a house cleaner? The last house cleaner I contacted, a Canadian, wanted $50 an hour. For that price, I will go clean her house. The hardest laborer worker we ever had was an immigrant. Give me a break. So what an arrogant, out-of-touch person. That is a gem of arrogance. This is almost traitorous. This would be disregarding your own people. There is some truth that Canadians don't want to do the menial jobs. Of course. Whether it's low status or whether it's the low pay, you don't see many whites in these positions. Part of that is the reason that these jobs don't pay very well. The pay of a job is sometimes connected to the status, not always. Like certain bureaucratic jobs, teaching jobs may pay low, but they have status. So status and pay do not always correlate perfectly. But there is a lot of the explanation being just the fact that economically, this is the last place you'd want to be as a smart white person setting out in the world. Of course, you try to move up maybe into the trades, into the office world, the corporate world, or entrepreneurialism. But we know that these low-end jobs were filled by white people for most of our history until recently. It's really an argument that is not really relevant because whites will go where they can earn a living. And in the past, if you could earn a living doing these jobs, you would find white people doing them. And of course, we lived in a white society anyways. Regardless, you'd find some white people to do the low-end jobs. And there's nothing wrong with working in a factory or doing a low-end job if you're honest and you can support yourself and hopefully support a family, which for most of previous generations people could. So yes, Canadians don't want to do those jobs, but that's no excuse to say, well, therefore it should be even worse for them if they were to do that job. Yeah, they should be paid even less, or the labor pool should be necessarily infiltrated by foreigners because, well, you Canadians, you had your chance, you didn't show an interest in doing these jobs. No, I think that's very sneaky and dishonest. And imagine the lack of foresight. Well, because it's a little more inconvenient for me that white people are going to expect a little more money for this, which is not true, as I'll get to. I think it's the industry standard for house cleaning, and I should know that because I do it on the side. This person is out of touch because they think fundamentally that $50 an hour is too much to pay a house cleaner. Now, I have done cleaning as a side gig. I don't do it as much these days because it's too tiring. But I did do it for a little bit with my friend. He was on these websites, TaskRabbit and other websites where you do odd jobs. And I did various garbage removal, junk removal thing, gardening, not gardening, but just cleaning up a yard once or twice. But mostly it's like house cleaning, like someone needs their bathroom cleaned or their living room, like the whole apartment cleaned. I would do that. And I still do cleaning for one guy's apartment because he lives nearby where I work. So it makes sense. But all the other cleaning gigs, I told my friend, no, I'm not really interested in doing that right now. Theoretically, could get back into it, but it's a lot of energy And I started out not knowing much, so I was just taking whatever you'll offer because I'm getting my foot in the door here, right? So you can pay me minimum wage or $18 an hour, and we're talking Canadian dollars here, 70 cents American. The minimum wage here is $17.20 right now in Ontario. So I was getting 18 or 19 for a while, and then after like 6 or 7 occasions, because I was a repeat for this guy, he was satisfied with the way I did the job. I cut out the middle guy, which is fine because after a while it's like, well, thanks for hooking me up with this, but I've been doing this for a number of months now, so I mean, it's fair enough. There's really no reason to keep the middleman there. But to be fair to the original client, I was like, well, you can just pay me whatever you were paying him. And he was only charging $23 an hour. So I was like, oh, okay, $23 an hour. It's really not that much. It's nothing really. And consider that I do it usually on Wednesdays every 2 weeks. Every second Wednesday, I go after work. But at around 6 p.m., I finish work like 4:30 p.m. So then I usually try to eat an early dinner at the office furniture manufacturing factory, which is maybe less than 2 kilometers from the destination where I do the cleaning. So I try to eat my dinner there at 4:30, and then it takes about half an hour to walk to the destination, the guy's apartment building. So I got to plan this out in my week, right? I got to make extra food the day before. I have to stick around at work an extra 45 minutes to an hour. Then I would take my bike, but my bike died in October. It died. The motor died after 13,000 kilometers or so. So I just walk, right? I mean, it was winter anyways, but I walk. So you wouldn't have been able to take the bike in the snow that we've had. You got to plan in that walk. Then you got to get there, and it takes time to set up. I got all my winter layers on. I got to take that off. I got to get stuff out of my big bag. I don't have to take too many cleaning supplies, but all the stuff that I have from being at work that day that I would have anyways, now I have that on top with cleaning duties. So I got to get over there. So I don't charge him from the minute I walk in the door. I charge him from after 10 or 12 minutes whenever I, in my opinion, get down to actually cleaning. Because I'm nice like that. I'm trying to be reasonable. I'm not like cheap, like, oh, I'm here charging you the second I step in your door. I'm just being honest in that sense. And generally works out to almost always about 2 hours to maybe the maximum I've ever spent there was maybe 2 hours and 45 minutes, unless he asked me to do something unusual, like clean the balcony. Once I cleaned the balcony, once I did. There was a lot of pigeon droppings, dried and fossilized pigeon dropping, and there was a dead pigeon in this trough. We didn't know that was there, but I had to take it out and put it in a garbage bag. The cleaning is normally just the bathroom, the central area, the kitchen, like surfaces, the floor, and then every other time I mop. But mopping is an extra 10 or 15 minutes. I just do the whole space. But the bathroom takes an hour. A bathroom is always going to take an hour. This sort of work is more exhausting than a meat factory. And I worked in a meat factory before where you're bent over the conveyor line, picking up pieces of meat. Very exhausting work, but that still doesn't compare to doing the same amount of labor hours as house cleaning, because house cleaning you're really bending down, you're getting down on your knees, you're going up, you're going at different angles, you're being mindful of the clock. You don't want to just slack because you kind of want to get out of there too. So you want to work at good pace. I'm working at a good pace after already working 8.5 hours in the factory earlier in the day, but I'm bringing it, slamming it. You vacuum first, you clean the toilet, you clean the shower, the sink, and then the mirror, and then any ledges or surfaces. And then the most amount of time is scrubbing the grout between the floor tiles, because the grout, that kind of material, loves to get discolored, loves to get biological material, mold, I suppose, very quickly. Maybe because it's porous. By nature, it's porous. So you always have to spend time scrubbing those. And yes, maybe if you were advanced, you could have some machine or something. But I think there's a natural limit with like using a machine in this kind of stuff. Like generally, the people starting out in this industry are going to just use their hands. But I suppose you could bring some heavy machine with you, but then you have to factor that in. You're going through the city in tiny spaces. Part of the good thing is not needing a truck, not needing a car, provided they have a vacuum that you can use, provided that they have a mop that you can use. There's not too much other chemicals. You might need to bring just like some paper towels, some disinfectant cleaner, some kitchen cleaner. I don't use the same materials for the bathroom that I would use for the kitchen, obviously. Some rags, some sponges, some gloves, of course. I use a mask, of course, when I'm spraying the stuff. So I do use a mask. That's one of the situations I do legitimately use a face mask, because it makes sense to me when you've got those chemicals being sprayed down and you're working in proximity to them. But it's not healthy to wear a mask for long periods of time either. This is why house cleaning as a full-time job, I don't imagine how that would be too healthy either. I think it's okay in small doses, it's fine. But to wear a mask, you'd have to be wearing a mask many hours a day. Obviously, $23 an hour is not reasonable based on what I've been telling you. It's not. It's like $46 for 2 hours, and then taking the transit for the day. Granted, I go to work, so I'd be taking that transit anyways. But just to give you an idea, like it's like $3.30 or $3.35 roughly for a one transit fare. So that would be $6.70 or $6.65 per day. Oh, you're making $46 at the cleaning after work. It's peanuts. It's peanuts. So I heard from my friend, he knows someone who's in the industry who does house cleaning, and this person organizes it, basically runs a business doing it. And from what I've heard from him, the standard rate is indeed $50 an hour. So like this person says, it's $50 an hour. But now you can see why it's $50 an hour. You have to put in a huge amount of energy. You have to be thorough. I mean, you could do a bad job, but then you're not doing quality work. You have to plan the task around other things, because this is not something you're logging at a factory where they can make an argument to pay you $17, $20 an hour. $17.20 an hour minimum wage, because you're just kind of in the factory not doing much, which is true. It's like in the factory I don't have to do very much. It's like ridiculous. There's usually nothing to do. So to do the cleaning, just likewise for teaching English as a second language or any of these other gigs, the fact that the person has to get to the location, they have to set aside time in the day for a specific task, makes it different from something you would be logging at the office when you were in a combined work slot, a combined daily portion of hours, generally 7 to 8 or more hours in a slot where you're conveniently located in one place, logging those hours. That's an entirely different thing from requiring someone to break that pattern, which they would be relying on economically, that time slot, to find another slot where they could find you in your location in your city and clean your place. So they have to set aside time for that time slot in their week, and they also in their day. If you're only going to give them a job which is 1 or 2 hours, and you're only going to do it at a random time, or only so much as you need it, which is only going to be probably monthly or maybe bi-monthly. If you need it more than bi-monthly, what's wrong with you? You're like a beast. You're in a pig pen. So generally people have it bi-monthly or monthly. So that's not obviously a full-time investment. So again, that's going to raise the premium on what people are going to legitimately expect. So the fact that they find immigrants who are willing to work for less because they're desperate immigrants, the fact that they successfully hire them and glower over the lazy Canadians as they view them, just makes the situation so much worse for everyone, because now you're bringing down what the labor is going to pay. You're bringing it down. You're going to make it more discouraging for anyone from my demographic to be interested in at least knowing that I can survive doing this, at least for a time, or I can get on my feet doing cleaning if I'm out of options. It would be really easy to organize your own cleaning company. That's something that people could consider doing it. Yeah, that's what I would say to that person. They're just like really arrogant and really out of touch. And $50 Canadian an hour is entirely reasonable. The lesson is that you should start out in the industry if you are not afraid of doing a low-end job to get somewhere to build some cash, because there is an economic need for this all over the city. People don't want to, or just don't have the willpower to clean their own place. And I'm not blaming them, but it's a real economic need. So you can always do that. You can always find someone to give you that position cleaning. But the idea is, don't start out at the minimum wage idea. At least if you have some basic experience cleaning. And if you have nothing and you're willing to learn, maybe you could do that. But then you depress the wage for everyone else. So we should think of it kind of democratic, but also kind of like a guild at the same time. A guild because like if you don't want to lower the expected salary for everyone, it's entirely reasonable to request $50. Even if you're not that good of a cleaner, it's the same sort of grunt or mule work. There's not that much of a learning curve once you learn, as long as you're not being lazy and you work at a good speed and you do the basic things. I personally tend to clean off the chemicals. Like I hose things off. I don't just leave the chemicals there. At least I try to make an effort to clean them off. Other people don't do that. Or at least, I don't know. I think other people don't do that, but you should. But anyways, it's otherwise not that complicated. That's why the salary or the pay shouldn't be that complicated. It should be at least approaching $50 an hour for someone starting out. And it could justifiably be more than $50 an hour if it's a long-term, reliable provider of cleaning that has been working at a good pace, knows what they're doing, and is always there. Then they could make maybe $60 an hour, maybe more. But at that point, if you're good at doing it, you should organize with other people and maybe delegate and then see if you can do it as a business. Hasta luego, amigos.